What? America having an education crisis? I thought we were the smartest country on the planet. Nah, it couldn't be. No, no, no. We are way too smart for this crisis.
The education system is going through a crisis, and teachers
Yeah,
don't know
it
what to
is
do.
going through a
Teachers are
crisis.
speaking out, saying that iPad kids are poorly behaved and impossible to teach.
Teachers of all ages are quitting their job because of the behavior of Gen Alpha students.
The kids have no ability to be bored.
I think, because I was a substitute for a little while, and I don't think I had to deal with Gen Alpha kids, but Gen Z kids. And it's funny because I'm a Gen Z myself. I was born in '97. But or I maybe no, yeah, I did had to teach elementary or substitute for elementary for 2 days. Worst 2 days of my substituting career. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, it's pretty bad.
Whatsoever. They live on their phones and they're just fed a constant stream of dopamine from the minute their eyes wake up in the morning until they go to sleep at night.
I'm gonna just say this. I teach 7th grade, they are still performing on the 4th grade level.
Jesus
In a previous
Christ.
video, I went in depth on America's literacy crisis, specifically talking about the factors that have led to young children's reading scores dropping since 2012. And while I did touch on a few factors of formal education that influence these scores, I didn't really focus on the structure of the education system as a whole. Traditional teaching methods, the growing disconnect between teachers and students, and the overwhelming presence of technology have made the image of students quietly sitting in a classroom while a teacher lectures feel more outdated than ever. So let's go deeper into the current problems with America's schooling system, how it no longer sets up children for as much success, and what changes we could make to adapt to an era of rapid transformation. The current education system has remained
I could say one thing that could change it. You have to ban phones, or at least have a mandatory locker system for like phones, because just it ain't gonna help in the long run. I mean, even back in my time when phones were still like growing, like but most students didn't even like were on their phones. Like I'd argue maybe a third of them were, like including me. Like it was just when I had no work. Like if I didn't have work to do and my teacher didn't really care, I would just go on my phone. But still, it's I think there has to be a mandatory locker system for like phones and such.
largely unchanged for the last 200 years or so. When industrialization ramped up in the West, it created the need for universal schooling. Factories needed workers with basic literacy and numeracy
Yep,
skills for operating
ultimating
machinery
our
and following
America.
instructions. But the push for universal education was also driven by things like reducing crime and promoting citizenship. At the time, the most optimal way to make sure the working population was receiving the teaching they needed in order to be prepared for their jobs was through rigid schedules, lecture-based instruction, and standardized testing. As the years went on, despite advancements in technology,
You see, okay, this is a bit of a tangent, but I've never done that. Like the salute, like all we did was, or wait, oh my God, the boys are saluting while the girls are putting their hand on their chest. I was taught that we all just had to put our hand on our chest, like we put our right arm on our chest. Like I don't know, maybe this is a different state. Like I'm born in Florida, so maybe that's why it's different.
speeding up, this remained a relatively viable way to teach children. And along the way, some of those advancements got integrated into universal education. Stuff like TVs, computers, and digital smartboards were used to enhance the
Oh, I
teaching
remember the
methods,
digital
but weren't
smartboards.
so detached
Those
from
were
how
so
those
cool.
methods had worked the past 100 plus years to the point where formal education was no longer effective or viable. But then, a few things happened. None of these factors alone can fully explain the decline of formal education, but together they've created the perfect storm that led to the current crisis we are in today. And those things are the unprecedented generational gap between teachers, adults, and Generation Alpha, the cost of living crisis, the devaluing of college degrees, artificial intelligence, and smartphones. And by the way, smartphones play a partial role in just
They
about
all
every
want to
other
blame
thing
us,
that I
Gen
listed
Zs,
off.
when
So
they're the
let's
ones that
start
created
with
the
the
situation.
teachers. According to a survey of more than 1,300 K-12 schools across the nation conducted in the 2024-2025 school year, 82% of public schools had 2 or more teaching vacancies, and 74% of them had difficulty filling those positions.
Okay,
Why?
so
Well,
a quick tangent. Like when I was substituting, my first year of substituting, I think for the first few days I did a middle school, and then I got a position at a high school for a full-time position. it was like the high school I graduated from, and it was like pretty short, like a few minute drive. They had, I think, like 15 vacancies in 1 year, and that was 2023 to 2024 school year. And it was crazy. Like I was lucky enough to get a full-time position, but you gotta think about it, like those kids ain't getting like actual teaching done to them. Like I try my best to help my students, and I help at least some of them. I knew there were some smart ones in there, but still, it's like you gotta like hope for the future and all that.
This survey found that the biggest reason was
And I tried
simply
again
that
like
too few
2024 to
candidates are applying
2025, but
for
there
open
was no
positions. But
there
I think it should
was
be obvious by
no
now
teaching
that the
positions filled
reason that's the
or
top
available.
reason is because of the awful pay. The Economic Policy
Yep,
Institute
that's
found that
also
on average, public school teachers earn 73.4 cents for every dollar relative to the earnings of similar professionals in 2023. That's roughly 27% less than comparable college graduates. So while the wages for most other college grads have gone up, the wages for teachers have remained largely stagnant since the mid-1990s. Knowing this,
for a
it's
while I was
easy to
planning on
see why
becoming a
we're
teacher,
hearing the
but
kinds of
after
stories
seeing
teachers are
like
sharing about
the
Gen Alpha
pay and being
students,
like
like
a
the ones I
substitute,
mentioned
I'm
at the start
like,
of the video.
nah, I think
OSHA Education Center is
Put very bluntly, people are much more willing to put up with bullshit, and in this case, kids' bullshit, if they're getting paid fairly for it. But seeing as the pay is so
true.
awful,
Yeah.
the ones that did decide to pursue
I
a
think that
degree in
applies with any job.
education that are getting paid pennies for it now have to put up with what is allegedly the most ill-tempered and self-centered generation there is.
Ooh,
We'll expand
yeah,
upon that
yeah,
observation
yeah.
in a second, but first I want to talk about today's sponsor, David Protein. I find it pretty difficult to
Sponsor.
stay in a
Okay, while
caloric
he's going
deficit
through this,
while
I'll
still
talk.
trying to maintain
When
or
I
build
was
muscle. And
substituting
as
for
someone who
like
takes
Gen
their
Alpha
fitness
kids for those
seriously,
elementary
this
schools,
is
I
a big
kid you
problem for
not,
me. I
one
could
of the
just eat
kids was
pounds of
like,
beef or chicken, but
"Do
when
you
I
know
eat those, I'm usually having a
skibbity,
full meal and the
skibbity?" And he was
calories in that
saying a
meal
bunch of other
can add
words, and
up
I'm like,
quickly.
"What the
But David
heck?"
allows me to get
And
rid of
these were
this
fifth
problem.
graders.
They have the
I
highest
thought
protein to
it'd be,
calorie ratio
I thought,
on the
oh, fifth
market.
graders,
It's
that could be pretty,
150
pretty cool,
calories
pretty
and
simple, pretty
28
easy.
grams of
Nope,
protein, which is
no, not at all.
absolutely unheard of
Oh
in a
god,
protein bar. With those
those two
macros, I
days were
expected it to taste like pure protein
were
chalk, but
pure
the
hell
blueberry
in my
pie
opinion.
one is
I
actually
was
really
mentally
tasty and masks the
exhausted
taste of protein well. And they
after the
just came
first
out with a new
day.
cinnamon roll flavor, which I destroyed faster than I would have liked to. If you're someone who's trying to lose weight and keep the calories down, but keep the protein up simultaneously, and you just want a quick, easy way to get in almost 30 grams of protein, should definitely check out David. You can get a whole carton entirely for free when you order 4 or more by using my link, which is in the description, or scanning the QR code that you see on screen right now. So go try it out. Let's keep the motherfucking gains. In a rare study comparing generational differences, the researchers identified characteristics of Generation Alpha from the perspective of preschool teachers. They found Generation Alpha to exhibit behaviors such as being more curious, free from any rules, being more ill-tempered, more mobile, and more self-centered than Generation Z. Moreover, they also had high self-esteem, and they were more emotional and more conscious. A caveat I'd like to make with this study is that they're just taking the perspective of a small sample of teachers and comparing them to their Gen Z students. So it would be wrong to generalize that all Generation Alpha kids have these traits more than Generation Z kids do. Still, what I think this study highlights is exactly what I wanted to get into next, the increasing generational gap. To really understand how big this gap is, let's compare the disconnect between today's teachers and Gen Alpha to a previous generational gap, when Gen X was in middle or high school around 1977 to 1998. Back then, the older teachers were mostly from the silent generation, shaped by World War II and post-war conservatism, while the younger ones were boomers, shaped by the civil rights movement, Vietnam War, and the counterculture era. Yes, they had different worldviews, but despite that, Gen Xers and boomers still grew up in a world that operated on the same basic rules. The way kids played, the way they socialized after school, the way teachers taught, it was all pretty consistent. Now let's contrast that with today. Gen Alpha is being taught by millennials and younger Gen Xers, people who didn't grow up with smartphones, social media, or instant access to AI-powered information. And meanwhile, Gen Alpha has never known a world without those things. Their entire childhood has been mediated by screens designed to grab their attention, deliver instant feedback, and never let them feel bored. We didn't just shift culture, we shifted the entire architecture of childhood. What took a century to evolve before now has flipped upside down completely in less than a decade. From the way they talk to
I remember the other day I saw it's kind of like this meme video about like every decade like shown like just for a few seconds, and it's crazy like seeing from the 90s to the 2000s like a huge shift, and now you have the 2010s and now the 2020s, and it's just crazy how fast we're moving. It's like technology is advancing so fast that we can't keep up. Like it's getting crazy. I mean, can you see like the AIs like what the AIs are doing? It's like so insane. It's like it's crazy. Like I think we're just moving at a really fast rate.
each other, to how quickly they receive information, to the pandemic, which stunted their maturity, to the endless amount of entertainment they have
Yeah,
access
COVID
to.
ruined a
Gen
lot of
Alpha is
shit.
the
I'm not
first
gonna lie.
generation that has grown up in a world almost completely foreign to any other generation before it. So when the teachers complain about their kids not focusing on their schoolwork or not paying attention or being rude, it's not just, oh, there's always going to be some rambunctious, rebellious kids, and there's going to be some bad apples in every class. It's these kids are now spending 7 hours a day every weekday in an incompatible, outdated system with them that we have been teaching kids to learn for the past 2 centuries. And it's neither the kids nor the teacher's fault. This is where someone might say, oh, well, it's the parents' responsibility. You know, the parents have to instill the importance of formal education and doing well in school to see future success early on in their childhood and restrict their kids from using stimulating devices as much as possible. And while that is true to some extent, I would argue that there's only so much that a parent can do to shelter their child from digital devices and the online world. Yes, parents should do a better job ensuring their child spends enough time playing with other children and actually engaging with physical reality.
Sorry about that.
But these devices are now so intertwined with our lifestyles that we depend on them to stay up to date and not fall behind in this new, ever-evolving digital world.
Yeah, I remember like not too long ago. You could even argue like before the 2020s that not a lot of or like it wasn't the majority. Like I'd say like less than half of companies would really use technology. And nowadays it's just like everything. Everything's via technology. Like while yes, that is good, it also like kind of hurts a lot of aspects about life and how easy it is to get some information. Like you have this small device that could give you all the information you need in the world, but yeah, we are not using it to that extent. And it's just kind of crazy.
That's not me giving parents an excuse to be shitty parents. It's just the reality.
Well, I do think that some blame can be put on the parents. I think it's just a bigger issue overall, more than the parents, the teachers, the students. I think it's just this system that we were grown up in, we were taught in. It needs an overhaul. Like even in high school, I'm like, why am I learning this stuff? Like I get it, it's to help like problem solving, but it, we need to learn stuff about the adult world. Like I'm gonna be honest, like take out junior and senior year, change them to be adult focused years where you actually learn shit about the adult world, so you're not going into it not knowing anything. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but hey.
Of what we're facing right now. And I know a lot of you might have rolled your eyes when I said millennials didn't grow up with social media and smartphones. Well, yeah, they kind of did, but they grew up in a time where social media wasn't so exploitative, abrasive, and mentally damaging. So they're still trying to catch up and learn about the damages that too much of this stuff can have on children and how to properly limit it. It's an extremely fresh field of research when we compare it to the entire timeline of the Industrial Revolution, because Gen Alpha is the first generation to grow up entirely in the 2020s era digital environment, with smartphones and social media embedded in daily life from birth. Now let's talk about one of the other ways that the digital environment has indirectly changed the world forever that is tied to the education crisis, the cost of living crisis, and the devaluing of college degrees. These are related enough that I feel like lumping them together just makes sense. When we think about how
I
to
recently
stop formal
graduated back at the
education
end of
from
2023,
declining,
and I
we often
still
tend to
haven't
focus
used my
on what
degree.
I've been talking about,
I've
such
been
as
looking,
improving the
but
system for
there's
both
just nothing
teachers
out
and
there.
students. That's absolutely important, but without a
That's probably
proper
my fault because I got a
incentive to
general
actually
studies degree.
study and learn, that still probably won't be enough. And right now, those incentives feel drier than ever. I don't need to beat a dead drum about how hard it is to afford the things that make life feel like it's actually moving forward, but let me beat a dead drum. Listen, Gen Alpha is not stupid, at least in the sense that they don't know what's going on in the world and what their potential future might look like. They are seeing loads of influencers talk about wages stagnating and house prices increasing and how AI is going to replace millions of jobs soon. With a narrative like that being fed to them, what incentive do they have to actually pay attention and do well in school? If what they're being taught isn't actually preparing them for the workforce and will barely help them get a job, what reason do they have to discipline themselves? Why would they listen to a teacher? Why would they behave? And so this too creates a cycle tied to the decline of teaching as a profession. Not only are teachers getting paid trash and they feel like they can't relate to students more than ever, but even if they do try to enforce rules and get students in trouble, the students simply don't care. Because why does it matter anyways?
And they have a level of apathy that I've never seen before in my whole career. Punishments don't work because they don't care about them. They don't care about grades. They don't care about college. It's like you are interacting with them briefly in between hits of the internet.
I get it, kids like this have always existed, but when a brighter future feels increasingly out of reach, then naturally more kids like this are going to spawn out of that system. And that's before I've even mentioned the cost of
And they keep blaming the younger generation. This is the old, you know how in anime and manga they always have like this evil group being the old people that are always ruining shit for the young. Like you gotta, yeah, start giving a shit about the young generation. Like let us afford houses, let us get jobs, or I don't know, put a UBI system in place nowadays since everything's being taken over by AI. But they gotta start doing something. Otherwise, like they complain about the population decline, and I'm like, you brought this upon yourselves. Like, give us shit to look forward to. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I mean, I do have hope for the future, but yeah, it's
pursuing college itself. The average cost of public higher education adjusted for inflation has soared, while the job market has simultaneously gotten harder and harder for new grads. Numbers from the first quarter of 2025 from the New York Federal Reserve show that the unemployment rate for recent college graduates reached 5.8%, up from 4.8% in January. Companies have also pulled back on hiring. Last fall, employers expected to increase college graduate hiring by 7.3%, according to a survey led by the National Association of Colleges and Employers. Now they're projecting just a 0.6% increase, with about 11% of companies planning to hire fewer new grads than before. The reasons for this are related to the reasons I outlined in my Why Young Men Aren't Going to College video, mainly that most employers now prioritize candidates' skills and experience over their degrees. To expect Gen Alpha, a generation that grew up in a fast-paced, information-rich digital environment, to sit in a classroom for 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, just to struggle to get a degree and then struggle to find a job because their degree isn't actually worth as much anymore, is insanity when you frame things that way. And that's the general feeling I get from Gen Alpha, especially since they are simultaneously fed the narrative that you can make money online in so many more different ways now, ways that aren't taught in school at all. And that leads me to the final boss of disrupting education: artificial intelligence. If there wasn't a big enough incentive
Yeah.
to pay attention and learn in class
Some
before,
AI is good.
well, you bet your ass there's virtually none now. It almost seems dumb to spend a long time talking about AI's impact on education because compared to everything else we've gone over, it's so blatantly obvious what the consequences will be. But maybe I'll spend an entire video talking about it in the future. If you want to see that, let me know in the comments. We've got kids using AI to do their assignments for them, cheat on their tests for them, summarize the books they're supposed to be reading, and then writing essays based on those summaries for them.
And you gotta see, like, AI is just a evolution of automation. Like, back then you had jobs where you could just screw in stuff, where you could just put things some on uh what am I saying there? You had like simple base jobs that could get you a house, could allow you to have a couple kids, to get you a degree on the weekends, stuff like that. Or yeah, doing a degree part time. But nowadays automation has kind of taken over that, and now we're seeing like AI taking over more of that. Like I'm gonna go a philosophical gamer route, but we need a UBI like at this point, like some
Not
sort of
actually
UBI
learning much
to
of anything in the process,
help
thus
out for the
stunting their
future.
ability to think critically, develop discipline, and focus. And you have to blame part of that on how the current education system teaches students and under-rewards students for learning, because again, there simply just isn't enough of an incentive to not cheat. So now that we understand what I believe to be the biggest reasons for the decline of formal education as a whole, the question then becomes, like always, what can we do? Well, in regards of how to teach specifically, I think it comes down to answering these 4 questions. How is Gen Alpha engaging with the world around them? How is that shaping their values and worldview? How can we naturally incorporate education into the things that already capture Gen Alpha's attention or create similar experiences that are educational by design? And how can we connect what students are learning to the real world skills they'll need for their future jobs while still emphasizing the importance of core subjects like math and reading no matter the career path? We already have a pretty clear picture of the answer to that first question, so let's move on to the next 3. As far as values and worldview, I think Gen Alpha are developing what we could call algorithmic values, and that sounds a lot more dystopian than it actually
Oh
is
my god.
when I'll go on to
Sounds like a
explain it.
foreign
What I mean by
concept
algorithmic
in my
values
opinion.
are expectations shaped by platforms that reward perceived authenticity, viral content, and instant feedback. Here's the wild part. Gen Alphas spend an average of 2 hours per day on TikTok, yet only
Dang.
5% rank social media as most important in their lives. This reveals a generation that's digitally native but surprisingly discerning. They expect personalization, immediate relevance, and content that adapts to their interests. Most importantly, they've grown up expecting information to be interactive, quick, and customizable, not static and one-size-fits-all. They value transparency over perfection, and they want to see direct connections between what they're learning and its real-world application.
They are so aware of their power and what they want and what they don't want, and they are not afraid to share it.
So next question, how can we naturally incorporate education into what already captures Gen Alpha's attention? Well, I think the best ways we could do this is through gamification and personalized learning experiences. When I say gamification, I'm referring to the process of applying game design and mechanics to
Sounds
non-game
like my alley.
contexts to enhance engagement and motivation.
But we did
Considering the
have
fact that most Gen Alphas play video games,
I'm not gonna lie, cause we do have, or maybe they just don't use them anymore. But I remember, I don't know, this just applies to intensive reading, but I had intensive reading from 6th grade up until 11th grade, and what we would do is that one session we go like into the classroom, the teacher would lecture us or do a lecture, and we do our assignments. But the other period, we would have this like game system with like 6 kind of like games where it'll kind of teach us like literacy skills and all that. But do they not do that anymore? Like, I know like it's funny because intensive reading is now called literally literacy strategies, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, I don't know if that name change was really necessary since, sorry about that. When I was in intensive classes, they didn't, when I see intensive like reading and math, it pushes me to actually pass those tests so I could get out of there and not have to take an intensive course again. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I think that name change was kind of
Games daily, this could be a great way to take the things they love about video games and the stimulation of it and apply
surprised.
that
Do they
to
not
learning.
still
For
incorporate
instance,
those
one study found that
learning
college students in a
games?
gamified cell biology class outperformed those in a traditional lecture-based class by 40%. Instead of just passively listening and regurgitating information, students earned points for completing challenges, unlocked new levels by mastering concepts, and collaborated in teams to solve simulated
this is
biological
exactly what I
problems.
did
The game
during,
mechanics kept them engaged, but the real
elementary
power was in
through
how those
middle
mechanics
school.
reinforced learning, making complex material feel active, personal, and rewarding. As for personalized learning, I think this makes more sense when we explain it through the last question that we need to answer. How can we connect what students are learning to the real-world skills they'll need for their future jobs while still emphasizing math and reading? I believe this requires us to fundamentally restructure middle and high school to mirror college choice while still maintaining those essential foundations. It's estimated that
The education
2/3 of
system
Gen
needs a
Alpha will
massive
work in
overhaul,
jobs
in my
that don't
opinion.
even exist today. Knowing this, aligning a school's curriculum with our new and upcoming world is essential if we want these kids to actually be prepared, have more job opportunities, and genuinely be excited about learning and entering the workforce. That means not only updating what we teach, but also giving kids more of a say in what learning path they choose to go down so they're more motivated and passionate about the work they're doing. Instead of forcing all students through identical curricula, imagine student-selected subjects, like students choosing from science, history, arts, technology, and career-focused
That needs to be the future.
options. Imagine choice-based reading, where students select books within genre requirements or thematic units with teacher guidance. And imagine flexible math pathways, where students learn essential mathematical concepts through applications that align with their interests, like game design, data analysis, financial planning, or engineering. For example, what if we showed students how statistical analysis applies to being an aspiring social media creator, or teaching geometric principles to those interested in game design, or algebraic concepts for future entrepreneurs calculating business models? When you tie the learning concepts into the worlds that they're already occupying and are interested in, that's when kids start to see more of a purpose in their education and become motivated to work hard. And of course, I didn't forget about the teachers. Both the implementation of the features I described just now and the increase in teacher wages would almost definitely require more school funding. States have cut school funding deeply since the Great Recession, and in many states, those cuts haven't been fully reversed.
If
If
teachers
you
were
or
paid
anyone
more,
you
they would
know
actually give a
knows
shit
how to
about their
start
jobs.
reversing
I'm not
this,
gonna lie.
please get them into some sort of local government office, or if you have any other suggestions, leave them in the comments. But if school funding itself doesn't increase, teachers still need to have their wages updated to meet modern standards. Otherwise, just like kids learning in the current education system, there's not gonna be enough of an incentive to become a teacher. And lastly, make college degrees worth something again. That means lowering the cost of public education and realigning college curricula as well to teach students relevant modern skills, adaptability, and flexibility, which is what a lot of employers are now looking for. So yeah, there's no single fix here. It's not just about making school more fun or banning phones or increasing teacher wages. It's about realizing that our current system is built for a world that doesn't exist anymore. And the longer we keep trying to force kids into this system, the more disengaged, frustrated, and hopeless they'll become. We have the tools, the research, and the understanding to start building something better. But whether we actually do that or just keep patching up the same broken structure depends on how seriously the message in this video is taken by the people who have the power to do something about it. It's clear that critical thinking is in a bit of a crisis now too, partly because of education, but partly because the online world is just so emotionally charged, full of rage baiting, full of misinformation, and full of people disagreeing and debating with each other in bad faith. In this world of increasing mistrust, it's going to become all the more important to have the skills to critically think, to emotionally regulate yourself, and to learn how to discern what is true and what isn't. The problem is there's not really any tools out there right now that actually teach you how to develop those critical thinking skills. And that is why for the past year, I've been working on creating a critical thinking masterclass, a 16-video curriculum designed to help you sharpen your reasoning, spot manipulative rhetoric, and navigate emotionally charged conversations, both online and in real life. I plan on completing the masterclass within the next couple months, so if you're interested, you can join the waitlist by going to cole-hastings.com/critical thinking. It's one of the first links in the description as well, and you will get notified when it drops. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't seen my literacy crisis video yet, you should watch it if you enjoyed.
Okay, that was a good video. I Yeah, he basically summarized my thoughts about the education system. It definitely needs a rework. It definitely needs an overhaul. It definitely needs a lot of changes needed to actually get the younger generations invested and interested in actually continuing and growing their life here in America. Like, yeah, but that's about it. That's a good video though.